The moment my laptop camera flickered, I should have known something was off. Not the usual Wi-Fi hiccup in Amsterdam kind of flicker, but the kind that whispers, "This call's about to gut you." I was halfway through a demo with a notoriously stone-faced client from Geneva, think Swiss precision, but with zero tolerance for American tech ego when the screen froze on my end, then blinked back to black. No audio, no video, just a slow, creeping silence. I stared at the loading wheel like it was my own obituary. I'd flown 4,000 miles for this. I hadn't seen my kids in weeks. I was jet-lagged, underslept, and running on espresso fumes and oat crackers from the minibar, but I kept going, muscle memory, really. While the screen buffered, I clicked open a tiny folder buried deep in an encrypted drive. Active license owner, MR, Dalton Holdings LLC. It was the digital spine of the entire operation. The thing nobody back home even remembered I'd built, because I never bragged, never grandstanded, never lunched with Tyler and his little army of Zoom-haired yes-men. I didn't panic. I emailed myself a backup, just the token chain time-stamped. No one else had access, not IT, not legal, not even the CTO. Because when they bought out Velisync 5 years ago, I was the only one who understood what inheriting liability meant. And while everyone else drank champagne and drafted LinkedIn posts about digital transformation, I quietly registered a license in the only way that protected us during the M and a freeze, under my own dormant LLC. You might be wondering, wait, why would someone build something so critical and not tell anyone? Simple, because no one asked. And frankly, no one cared until they couldn't log in. By the way, if you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates a slow burn, a bit of strategic chaos, and the quiet art of revenge without breaking a single law. If that's your flavor, hit the like button and subscribe. Seriously, 90% of folks don't, but it really helps our team keep these stories coming. Plus, it lets the algorithm know you're one of the smart ones. Anyway, back to my downfall. The client was still talking. I could see their little avatar blinking away like nothing had happened, but I wasn't in the room anymore, not technically. I opened a second tab to ping HQ about the glitch. That's when it happened. New calendar invite. Subject, urgent, HR plus VP Tyler call. It was scheduled to start 3 minutes ago. No subject details, no reason, just the kind of digital ambush that smells like death in a cubicle. Tyler. Tyler with the shaved side part and a vocabulary full of terms like synergy loop and client vibration. Tyler, who once asked me if GDPR was that EU yoga thing. He'd been promoted to VP 3 months ago. Nobody really understood why. His last two projects hemorrhaged budget like a Vegas divorce. But he had energy, charisma, and a golf swing that the CEO called boardroom material. I joined the call. HR was already there. Smile tight, voice softer than usual, like someone easing a dog into a crate. Then Tyler joined, all smug calm, like he'd just secured a table at a five-star place you didn't know existed. He didn't say hi. He didn't ask about the client meeting. He just read the script. Mary, due to ongoing restructuring and strategic prioritization, your role has been made redundant effective immediately. Your credentials have been deactivated. I didn't say a word, just watched my access vanish in real time. The VPN disconnected. My internal chat channels kicked me out. The internal dashboard refreshed and came back empty, like I never existed. Then came the cherry on this crap sundae. He leaned forward, lips curling slightly like he was trying not to smirk. Skylar will be transitioning into your responsibilities. She's already been briefed. Skylar, fresh out of grad school with a digital portfolio full of Canva presentations and exactly zero knowledge of cross-border compliance. She once asked me what a binding arbitration clause was. I told her it was the part of the contract that keeps us from getting sued into bankruptcy. She laughed, thought I was kidding. I looked back at the blinking HR rep, then at Tyler. I said one word, understood. Then I shut the laptop, didn't even log out, just closed it like a coffin. The Swiss client never even knew I was gone yet, but in 5 days they would. Because that license I backed up, that key I owned, it had an expiration date. And without my signature, that fancy platform of theirs was about to go dark. Globally, you ever watch your entire professional identity dissolve in real time, pixel by pixel? Like a bad magic trick, only the rabbits your career and the hats on fire. Right after that Zoom with HR and Tyler, I sat in the silence. Not even the hum of the minibar or the traffic outside could break it. My ears rang with how clean it all was. Clinical, they'd rehearsed it, probably practiced it like a TEDx audition, minus the compassion. There was no warning, no let's have a conversation. Just a screen going black mid-client call, then a new meeting link, and boom, two corporate vultures smiling through digital gloss. Organizational restructuring, Tyler had said, like he was announcing a new flavor of oat milk. Your role has been eliminated, effective immediately. I didn't even bother asking why, I already knew. My name didn't look good in the org chart anymore. It wasn't sleek, wasn't shiny. I didn't post inspirational quotes on LinkedIn. I didn't wear influencer eyewear or clog up Slack with fake enthusiastic gifs. I just did the work. And that's the thing no one tells you about being the workhorse. They ride you through every storm, then shoot you in the field once the sun comes out. I watched as my dashboard blinked out, access revoked, permissions stripped, email inbox going dark like a series of dying stars. A colleague DM'd me a confused "Are you okay?" before my account vanished mid-typing. The final insult, a cheerful little pop-up, "Your session has expired." Oh, honey, you have no idea. An hour later, from my burner Gmail, I watched the company-wide email roll in. Excited to announce Skylar's expanded role, it read, like they were promoting a contestant on The Bachelor. She'd been shadowing me for 3 weeks. Shadowing in this case, meaning scrolling Instagram while I explained GDPR frameworks, and she asked what GDPR stood for. She once told me she liked how I talked like a real person, which, in hindsight, was probably her code for old. The photo attached to the email, Skylar in front of a fake plant wall, holding a latte like it was a diploma. Proud to step into this leadership moment, her quote read, "Leadership moment. That's what they're calling plagiarism now, I guess." I didn't respond, didn't call anyone, didn't text the team in Geneva. I just sat still in the hotel chair, the vinyl cushion sticking slightly to the back of my blouse. Then I got up, opened my suitcase, and pulled out the black envelope I'd carried since the license was first signed. Inside, my printed LLC formation documents. MR, Dalton Holdings. The quiet little company with no logo, no website, no ego, just one job. Own the damn license that kept a $90 million software agreement compliant in the EU. I walked over to the desk, took a photo of the docs, and uploaded them to a secure folder. Then I opened the license portal, looked at the countdown timer, 5 days, 17 hours, 29 minutes until expiration. No action taken, no renewal selected. Because you see, Tyler thought by cutting me off he'd erased me, like I was some clerical oversight, a personnel ghost to be exorcised with a few strokes of HR's wand. But what he didn't know, and Skylar sure as hell didn't know, was that the contract wasn't with Delmora Inc. Actual license was between the European client and MR. Dalton Holdings LLC, and I, unfortunately for them, am Mary Dalton, the named grantor, the key holder, the only person alive with the authority to authenticate that token. Without my digital handshake, the software they'd promised would audit every compliance transaction across 12 countries. It goes belly up, dead in the water. I didn't gloat, didn't laugh, didn't even smile. I just stared at the screen, sipped the last of my cold hotel coffee, and whispered the same word I'd used in the Zoom, "Understood." Then I powered the laptop down and watched the lights go out. Not just on my screen, on theirs. I didn't waste a single breath on appeals or exit interviews. Let them keep the severance package. I'd already built my parachute years ago. Instead, I booked the next morning's flight to Geneva, stuffed everything into my roller bag like I was leaving a motel after an affair, and walked straight past the hotel lobby like a ghost clocking out. I didn't even tell my client I'd been fired. I figured I had 5 days before the silence turned into sirens. 5 days before the license token, I controlled, quietly bled out, and the entire compliance platform across their enterprise blinked off like someone yanked the plug on a Christmas tree. By the time my boots hit Swiss soil, the buzzing started. At first, it was subtle. One of the analysts on the client side emailed me from her personal address. "Hey, Mary, weird question. We can't see phase 2 records on the dashboard anymore. Is that a glitch on our end?" Then came another. "Mary, we've had 5 login failures in the last hour. Is there a server issue we should know about?" By the time I checked into my suite at the Beau Rivage, an overkill of Baroque molding and silence, I'd missed 9 calls. All unknown numbers. All likely from people who just realized that Skylar from onboarding didn't know what the hell a digital authentication token even was. I set my phone to silent and poured a glass of wine. Then I opened my laptop. Not the company one. Tyler saw to it that one was dead. I meant the personal one wired into 3 different encrypted drives and a private domain registrar they wouldn't even know to subpoena if they tried. I logged into the license management portal. The interface was plain, no logos, no corporate flair, just a series of keys with countdown clocks beside them. And there it was. Token, active, status, valid, expiration, 4 days, 19 hours, 12 minutes. No renewals scheduled. No delegation authorized. And then, just below the timer, the clause I'd embedded into the original shell agreement. Plain text, ironclad. License remains valid only with active authentication by named grantor, MR, Dalton Holdings LLC. I'd written that line myself, not the legal team. Me. Back when the whole deal was on fire during the Velisync acquisition and the CTO was busy golfing with investors while I patched together the compliance infrastructure with a bottle of aspirin and a prayer. Nobody wanted to touch liability, so I stepped in, created the LLC, registered the token, embedded the clause, and in return, silence. No thank you, no bonus, not even a line on the org chart. They treated it like a side note. But now, that clause was the ticking heart of the entire operation. Without my digital signature, the license would expire and the software would fail regulatory checksum within hours. Once it failed that audit pass, European regulators would freeze the client's operations until recertification. Translation: millions in losses. Fines, contract breaches, panic, and none of it was my doing. I hadn't sabotaged a thing. I hadn't tampered, leaked, or interfered. I had simply not acted, not renewed, not clicked the button that said, yes, I authorize this license to remain active under the agreed terms, and no one else could, not Tyler, not Skylar, not even the CEO. Erased my credentials, thinking that's where my power lived. But they forgot the golden rule of enterprise software. It's not who builds it, it's who owns the key, and they handed me that key years ago. Practically begged me to take it, so now I waited, not to attack, not to gloat, just to watch, because the system was already cracking. The client hadn't gone public yet, they were still in the maybe it's a bug phase. But that window, it was closing fast. And when it slammed shut, the lawsuits would follow. I closed the portal, stood by the window, and looked down at the lake. A light fog was rolling in, soft and slow, just like what was about to hit Delmora. They had 4 days and change to fix a problem they didn't even know how to define. And the only person who could save them was the one they'd deleted like junk mail. Back at Delmora HQ, while I sipped espresso under a gray Geneva sky, the cascade began. It started innocently enough. Skylar uploaded her first week vision statement to the team drive, color-coded, overly cheerful, heavy on buzzwords like synergize and brand elevation. No mention of tokens, no understanding of jurisdictional compliance. Just pastel PowerPoint slides and emojis in bullet points. Tyler, meanwhile, was busy peacocking. He posted a filtered headshot to LinkedIn, him in front of a dry erase board like he'd just solved world hunger. Caption, proud to announce a new phase of strategic leadership at Delmora. Welcome Skylar Jameson to the helm of global compliance innovation. Big things ahead. Hash next gen leadership hash Delmora forward 200 likes. 30 comments, one fire emoji. And not a single person asking, wait, where's Mary? But across the Atlantic, in a quiet office outside Munich, the European client systems coughed once, then flatlined. Their dashboard logged thousands of failures per minute. Compliance audits halted mid-run. Access tokens returned a bright red invalid grantor error, and buried in the logs, plain as day, token de-authenticated. Ownership mismatch. See, the system didn't crash. It refused to run. By design. Because the contract we'd signed with their board included a clause that mirrored my original license language. All validations had to originate from the named entity. And Skylar, bless her caffeinated heart, wasn't the named anything. She couldn't authenticate even if she offered the system a blood sacrifice. The client's internal legal team didn't panic right away. At first, they did what corporate legal always does, assumed it was a software issue. Opened a ticket, waited for a reply, they didn't get one, because nobody at Delmora had the credentials to access the license registry. So by the time someone finally noticed the token trail led to MR, Dalton Holdings LLC, the audit clocks had already tripped. Under the terms of the contract, every hour of system failure initiated a rolling penalty. Euros 50,000 per hour, roughly $1.2 million per day. Compoundable, non-negotiable. And the timer was already at 8 hours, 42 minutes. That's when Tyler sent his first email to my personal inbox. Subject, urgent license assistance, needed the body was a jumble of false comm and corporate groveling. Hi Mary, hope you're well. There appears to be a miscommunication regarding the license grantor details for the Delmora Helvex deployment. We're hoping to quickly resolve the issue to avoid further complications. Would you be open to a brief call to clarify next steps? Best, Tyler R., VP Global Solutions. No apology, no accountability. Just a snake in a necktie pretending the blade he twisted in me was actually a handshake. I didn't reply, not because I was being cruel, but because it wasn't my problem. They voided the agreement the second they terminated the grantor. That's what Tyler never understood. Compliance isn't a vibe, it's a contract. And contracts don't care about office politics. Back at Delmora, the silence was cracking. Engineers couldn't reboot the platform because it was cloud authenticated through the revoked token. Support calls piled up from the client's regional branches. Nobody had an answer. Everyone had excuses. Meanwhile, in Geneva, I took a walk along the lake. No laptop, no briefcase. Just me, a scarf, and the knowledge that for once, my absence was louder than any noise I could have made. That night, a former colleague DM'd me. Just one line, they're spiraling. I think they just realized you were the license. I didn't answer. I just set my alarm for the next morning and went to sleep knowing the storm had only just begun. At 7:03 a.m., Geneva time, the first domino tipped. The client's compliance officer, an icy man named Hosser, whose voice once made an entire procurement team cry during onboarding, formally triggered Clause 14.3 of the Helvex Delmora contract, breach notification and penalty accrual. The clause was plain, stark, European in its bluntness. In the event of sustained software deactivation, not due to force majeure or pre-agreed maintenance, vendor shall incur a penalty of Euros 50,000 per hour until system restoration and retroactive certification is confirmed by client's legal. Translated to USD, about $1.2 million every 24 hours. Non-negotiable, no appeal. And just like that, the clock started ticking. Inside Delmora's San Francisco headquarters, panic metastasized like black mold. Tyler called legal. Legal called the CTO. The CTO called the VP of infrastructure. Everyone started blaming firewalls, APIs, phantom updates, anything but the truth. But then someone dug up an old email thread, buried in a folder marked VeloSync integration legacy docs, a thread from 5 years ago. Me, the CTO, and a sleepy junior attorney named Jonah, who's probably in therapy now. Subject line, interim license holding structure urgent sign-off required, Jonah had asked. So just to confirm, Mary, you're setting up an LLC to temporarily hold the operational license until Delmora formalizes entity ownership? I'd replied, correct. MR, Dalton Holdings LLC will act as named grantor until Delmora assumes direct liability. If no formal transition occurs, the license remains in my name. There it was, in writing. Timestamps with attachments. 5 years they had to assume ownership. 5 years to dot the I's and cross the T's. But they were too busy hosting all-hands meetings about vision statements and staging quarterly photo ops to remember the tiny little matter of who held the core license. Me and the LLC still active, registered, clean, untouched. Tyler's voice cracked in the legal team's war room. We didn't think she still had it. No, Tyler, you didn't think. That was the problem. At that exact moment, I was walking along Lake Geneva. Mid-autumn sun slanting off the water, the air crisp enough to make your nose sting. A vendor handed me a paper cone of roasted chestnuts. I thanked him, took my time. Meanwhile, my phone vibrated like a bomb about to go off. 10 missed calls. 15, 27. My inbox flooded. Subject lines in all caps. Urgent. Please call. System down. We need your signature. Legal is asking for you. Tyler says it's a misunderstanding. Then came the voicemails. I didn't listen. But the transcripts auto-loaded. Mary, if you're seeing this, please, we need to talk. There's a situation with the client. It's getting out of control. I know things didn't end well, but we can fix this together. Tyler, using the royal we. Adorable. Legal tried next. Miss Dalton, this is Rebecca from Delmora Legal, requesting clarification on your ownership status over the operational license for the Helvex platform. There may have been a lapse in internal documentation. A lapse, she called it. Like forgetting to water a plant, not detonating a compliance time bomb under a $90 million contract. The CTO tried calling too. Left a message full of tech lingo that amounted to one thing: we can't get the system back online without you. Please help. But the best message came from Jonah. That same junior attorney from 5 years ago, now, apparently promoted just enough to be terrified. He forwarded the original license agreement. No note, no subject line. Just the document and one line at the bottom. You were right. I put the phone away. Let it buzz itself into a coma. The Helvex team hadn't gone public yet, but they would soon. By Swiss law, any breach of this magnitude had to be disclosed within 72 hours. Their audit committee had likely already begun drafting the release. Investors would be notified. Markets would sniff the blood. Delmora's house of glass was already cracking. They just didn't know which window would shatter first. And me, I wasn't angry, not anymore. There's a point beyond rage where everything becomes still. Cold, almost peaceful. Let them sweat. I bought another coffee, took a seat facing the lake, and watched the white sails drift by like nothing in the world was on fire. But I knew better. Inside that San Francisco office, everything was burning. Some men, when faced with a fire, reached for water. Tyler? He grabbed gasoline and a match. Instead of owning the failure, admitting he axed the one person who held the spine of the operation, he did what every smug, corner-cutting golden boy does under pressure: tried to cheat the system. I got word through back channels that he'd instructed the engineering team to generate a duplicate key using archived specs from the original license file. Thought maybe if they could spoof the grantor metadata, the client system would accept it, and everything could go back to normal. But here's the thing about digital contracts tied to biometric locks and cross-border legal compliance: they're not normal. You don't fake them like a sick note. You don't swap in a new name and expect the machine to curtsy. The moment that forged key hit the authentication servers in the EU, the platform did what it was designed to do: reject it, flat, loud, and permanently. Error 403, grantor mismatch, reason: illegal key source, escalation, client security team. I nearly choked on my espresso when I saw the error forwarded to me by a former dev from Delmora who now worked freelance for the Swiss compliance firm and apparently still had a soul. Attached to the forwarded email was a screenshot of Tyler's frantic Slack messages to the engineering team. We can't just delete her and pretend it works. The system is literally yelling at us. Somebody find a workaround before legal eats me alive. What does biometric signature chain even mean? We've got 48 hours until the board finds out this wasn't a glitch. But it wasn't 48 hours. It was 72, and the countdown had already begun. That same afternoon, the European client issued a formal warning. If the original licensee does not re-authenticate the system within 72 hours, Helvex will terminate all commercial contracts with Delmora, effective immediately, and pursue damages. No bluff, no bargaining. Just a steel-plated email signed off by 3 legal officers and 1 board member. At Delmora, that email landed like a meteor. Legal demanded answers. The CTO began reciting acronyms like prayers. Skylar was quietly removed from all client-facing Slack channels. And Tyler? Well, Tyler went very, very quiet. His LinkedIn post from earlier in the week, deleted. That's when the next shot came from me. I hadn't spoken to anyone at Delmora since the day they fired me. But my attorney had. She drafted the letter on crisp, watermarked paper, hand-delivered and notarized by courier to Delmora Legal with a single message enclosed. Pursuant to Clause 7A of the Helvex licensing agreement and the original MR. Dalton Holdings contract, the termination of the named grantor nullifies all license obligations and authorizations. You voided the license by terminating the grantor. Any attempt to forge, replicate, or override said license is a direct violation of Swiss data law and Article 12 of the EU Tech Compliance Directive. Cease and desist all further action. Legal counsel for MR. Dalton Holdings LLC. I imagine the blood drained from someone's face when they read that, because now it was real. This wasn't just a contract hiccup or a miscommunication. This was a legal landmine, one they stepped on when they thought they could restructure their way to efficiency. Meanwhile, I sat at my favorite sidewalk cafe in Geneva. Same table, same espresso, watching the ducks paddle around the lake like nothing was melting down across the ocean. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with another message forwarded from contacts still on the inside. Tyler was spiraling. Legal was in emergency sessions. Skylar had apparently been told to take a leave of absence to reflect on alignment. But me, I crossed one leg over the other, leaned back in my chair, and let the sun warm my face. Because for once, I didn't have to do anything. They'd already destroyed themselves. All I did was decline to fix what they broke. The meltdown didn't arrive with a bang. It came in waves, sudden, cold, relentless. On the second morning of the 72-hour deadline, Delmora's CFO, an oatmeal-smooth man named Lowell who once called my work quietly adequate, scheduled a 6 a.m. emergency call with shareholders. The subject line was simple: urgent, status update Helvex partnership. Translation: we're bleeding and it's her name on the scalpel. The call started with the usual smokescreen. Lowell blamed unexpected technical disruption, transition miscommunication, and third-party escalation delays. But shareholders aren't stupid, especially not the ones who'd personally flown to Munich 2 years ago to celebrate the signing of the Helvex deal over foie gras and tax shelters. And when one particularly vocal investor, the kind with a voice like a rusted hinge and more money than patience, cut through the script and asked the question that had apparently been echoing in legal all week, the call turned. Wait, hold up. Who actually owns the Helvex license? The line went silent. Someone shuffled papers. Lowell cleared his throat, then mumbled there appears to be legacy ownership issues stemming from the Velisync integration. Wrong answer. Because then came the follow-up: she owned the contract? And just like that, the room changed, not metaphorically. Literally. Because while the call was still going on, while words like material breach and reputational risk ricocheted through Delmora's glass-walled boardroom, a quiet internal email began circulating. No salutation, no signature, just a forward with a single line added in bold red font. Mary Dalton owned the license personally. They never bought her out. No spin, no defense. Just a raw fact delivered like a gut punch to the leadership team who'd spent the last 72 hours pretending I didn't exist. Tyler didn't respond to it because by that point, he was already on administrative leave. The official announcement used the usual HR sugarcoating, pending internal review of recent project oversight decisions. But the real reason? Investors wanted ahead, and Tyler's was already halfway in the basket. Skylar's access was revoked 15 minutes later. No farewell email, no Slack goodbye. Her corporate login returned a sterile access denied before she could even download her personal folders. Word spread fast. My phone buzzed with a message from an old friend in product who never liked me much. Too ambitious to be friendly, too smart to ignore me entirely. They're finally saying your name out loud. I stared at it for a long moment. Because that was the part no one ever admits about these jobs, the slow erasure. How one day you're indispensable and the next, your name disappears like it was never on the door. Like your hours, your nights, your weekends spent holding the company's spine together never happened, until it all breaks. And then suddenly, you're remembered, not as a person, as a line item, a missing piece that set the whole machine on fire. Investor pressure mounted. The Helvex board issued a preliminary breach declaration to their regulators. Journalists started circling, asking questions about Delmora's licensing irregularities. One European tech columnist called it the costliest case of executive myopia in a decade. And through it all, I stayed silent. No press release, no social media clapback, no op-ed dragging them by their $300 haircut. I just kept walking, kept sipping coffee, kept reviewing my options. Because what they didn't know, what no one on that shareholder call understood yet, was that Helvex had already reached out to me. Privately. discreetly. They weren't asking for help restoring the license. They were asking if I'd consider offering them a direct agreement, on my terms, because now they knew the truth. They'd never needed Delmora, they just needed me. The message came in the form of a discreet email, clean signature block, minimal pleasantries, straight to the point. Subject, Private Inquiry Continuity Solutions. It was from Helvex's Chief Strategy Officer. Not legal, not procurement. Strategy, which meant they weren't looking for resolution. They were looking for permanence. I didn't open it right away. Let it sit in my inbox while I finished my morning walk past the vineyards outside Lausanne. The air smelled like crushed leaves and new money, appropriate, given what was about to happen. When I finally opened the email, it was everything I expected and nothing I didn't. You understand the circumstances surrounding the termination of your role at Delmora may have created tension around the current license agreement. As we conduct our internal review, we'd like to explore the possibility of contracting with you directly through MR. Dalton Holdings LLC for continued platform support and continuity. Naturally, this would be contingent on terms favorable to you. Are you open to discussion? No threats, no desperation, just respect. For the first time in 5 years, they weren't talking at me. They were talking to me. I didn't rush. I asked for the terms in writing. When they sent them over, I read every clause like I was carving them in stone. And then I did something I'd been waiting to do for a very long time. I added a new clause of my own. This license is non-transferable. No subcontracting or third-party administration is permitted. Authorization and support may only be rendered by MR. Dalton Holdings LLC and its named principal, Mary R. Dalton. This agreement shall remain in force unless revoked by the grantor. They didn't push back. They didn't edit. They just signed 3 board signatures, 1 compliance officer, and mine. I signed the final page while seated under the awning of a vineyard terrace, a glass of local white wine in one hand, pen in the other. Wind stirred the edge of the contract as I pressed my signature down in blue ink. 5 minutes later, the client sent the official confirmation. A single PDF, top corner stamped in red, authorized vendor, MR, Dalton Holdings Limited. That was it. Delmore was out, completely. No transition, no apology, no golden parachute. The client didn't want to salvage the mess. They wanted to erase it. And that's what happens when you forget where the true value lies. It was never in the building, never in the org chart, never in Tyler's brittle ego or Skylar's hollow title. It was in the code I built, the trust I earned, the contract I held. I didn't take joy in it, though I'd be lying if I said it wasn't satisfying. But this wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about correction, putting things back in order after years of dysfunction masked as leadership. Let the suits panic. Let the shareholders fume. Let Tyler spiral into whatever startup he tries to inflate next. Me, I'd already moved on. I closed my laptop, took a slow sip of wine, and let the sun pour across the vines like golden silence, because I hadn't just reclaimed a contract. I'd reclaimed my name. The filing hit the SEC database at 4:17 p.m. Eastern. Buried among routine earnings chatter and boilerplate risk disclosures was a line that detonated quietly across financial terminals. Delmora Corp. has terminated its licensing agreement with Helvex AG due to unresolved contractual discrepancies and inability to restore platform compliance. Analysts speak for, we lost the deal. We can't fix it. We've been cut out completely. By morning, their stock had dropped 12%. By end of week, 19%. Not catastrophic, but enough to make boardrooms tense and investor calls acidic. Enough to expose what had been obvious all along. They'd bet the house on a deal built around someone they'd fired over Zoom. Meanwhile, Tyler vanished. No formal announcement. No farewell post. Just silence. His LinkedIn, once a stream of hash leadership quotes and latte-filtered headshots, went blank. The page redirected to a 404 within days. Rumor had it he was consulting abroad, but insiders knew better. No one wants a strategist whose strategy ended in legal fire and financial hemorrhage. Skylar didn't even get a headline. She quietly resigned, effective immediately after reflecting on alignment, according to a vague HR email someone forwarded me, followed by a string of eye-roll emojis. And me? I launched the site that same week. Dalton Continuity Com tagline, independent solutions. Owned, delivered, secured, no flash. No team bios, just one page, clean and intentional like a contract with no loopholes. My name, my entity, my ownership. I didn't announce it, didn't promote it. I just made it visible. And it was enough, because people talk. Clients read between the lines. Vendors notice who kept their systems running and who let them fail. I'd already received 2 inbound messages before the site even indexed on Google. One from a former client whispering about a restructuring deal. The other, a firm I'd never worked with but who'd heard exactly what had gone down. I was no longer that woman from compliance. I was the continuity. The power didn't come from yelling. It came from holding the keystone and waiting while they dismantled their own foundation. A week later, a courier arrived at my door in Lausanne. No sender listed, just a cream-colored box sealed with burgundy ribbon. Inside was a bottle of Helvex's private label red and a handwritten note. Just one line, for the one who owned the key all along. I didn't smile, not exactly. I poured a glass, stepped out onto the balcony, and let the quiet hum of autumn swirl around me. They'd taken my access, my position, my title. But in doing so, they'd handed me something far more permanent. Because ownership isn't about the badge you wear or the office you sit in. It's about the line in the contract that no one reads until it's too late. And I wrote that line. They erased my credentials. I erased their contract. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.